Hello to whoever may be watching. I'm a young writer by the name of Everett Bryant, trying to use videos to make a name for myself and build an audience for my writing. Now, this video essay is a little different from my previous videos, which did focus solely on my writing. But with it, I hope to bring attention to a topic in media and pop culture that I find to be incredibly relevant. And it's something that I've been planning on doing for a while now, and something I plan to do in the future as well. So later videos will not just be my writing, but also my opinions on things in media and pop culture and the like. So stay tuned for that. But the topic I plan on talking about today is what I like to refer to as the legacy effect of adaptations. Now, in the modern world of media, if there is a story, whether it be a book, a movie, a video game, or what have you, there is a likely chance that it will be adapted into another form of media. And most commonly you'll find this being books turned into feature-length films, or even TV series, or a lot of the time both. I'm sure you can think of one right now that maybe you liked, maybe you didn't really like it that much, maybe you prefer the original form, maybe you prefer this adaptation. I want to explore that. Now, there are many reasons as to why one might adapt a story, whether it's to appeal to a new audience, generate revenue, express appreciation for the adaptation's original, or to reinvigorate the original's legacy. No matter the reason for an adaptation's creation, and no matter the reception of the adaptation, there are lasting effects on the original story's legacy, effects that I plan to explore throughout this essay. I plan to take a look at several adaptations by comparing and contrasting the two with the sources and the adaptation to demonstrate the positive or negative effects one can have on the legacy of the original story. And I'll be sure to start each of these sections off with a very brief summary of events of the original and the adaptation before comparing and contrasting the two. So, hopefully that sounds interesting to you. If it does, please stay until the end, and maybe consider liking and subscribing, because everything helps support the channel. But let's begin. After the death of his wife in 1963, author Ted Hughes wrote The Iron Man in 1968 for his children, and it was later titled The Iron Giant in America. The story tells of a mysterious giant man made out of metal. He's roaming in search of food, tractors, gas stoves, cars, barbed wire, until farm boy Hogarth finds the giant, gets the townspeople to capture it, and he leads it to a scrapyard. Hogarth then starts to form a faint bond with the giant as it feasts. Then a star containing a bat-like creature the size of Australia starts heading for the Earth. It's intent on devouring the planet. The giant challenges the creature to a feat of strength, seeing who can withstand the harshest heat. The giant has the people construct a furnace for it, where it's made of metal, so, doesn't really get damaged all that much. And the bat decides to fly into the sun. When it returns, it's horribly burned and very much accepting defeat. And the giant asks why the creature chose to come to Earth to try and devour it. And it answers that the constant shouts and cries of war attracted it, and it wanted to eat the planet to silence the noise. The giant, however, convinces the bat to spare the planet and to go back off into space, where it sings the song of the universe. This book, and many of Hughes' others, were described as searching for a way to make sense of the damage that human beings inflict on one another in a cruelly indifferent universe. And ultimately, the book The Iron Man is about how humanity's conflict only brings about more conflict. In 1999, animated writer and director Brad Bird made the animated film adaptation of Hughes' book titled The Iron Giant. And the movie very roughly follows the storyline of the book, where in the movie it takes place in the late 1950s, in the early stages of the Cold War, and it is the giant who comes from outer space. So there's unfortunately no Australia-sized space bat. But the giant crashes down into the shores of Maine, spooking local fishermen as it wanders into the woods in search of food. Intrigued by the spreading rumors, Hogarth goes out in search of the giant, finding it chewing on electrical lines and causing a power outage. This outage and the spreading rumors brings in government agent Kent Mansley to investigate. And this guy, he is using the fear and paranoia of the Cold War to manipulate pretty much everyone in town and get whatever he wants. And this leads Hogarth to take the giant to the scrapyard, where he can hide and feast on metal to his heart's content. As Hogarth and the giant bond, they, though, unlearn the giant's true destructive capabilities and are both equally frightened by them. Hogarth, however, teaches the giant that no matter what he's made for, he is who he chooses to be. Things, though, escalate when Mansley discovers the giant, calls in the military to destroy it, and prematurely launches a nuclear missile at the giant in the center of town. What a guy. Model citizen right there. But the giant says his final goodbyes to everyone, flies up to intercept the missile, and saves the day. Ultimately, The Iron Giant is a movie explaining the destructive power of fear-mongering, but more importantly, the idea that we are not defined by what we are, but instead by who we choose to be. When looking at both the book and the movie adaptation, the differences are pretty clear and distinct, where the book focuses more so about the overarching threat humanity poses to itself and the destruction we are bound to bring, represented through the interstellar bat monster coming to devour us. The adaptation's main theme is more about being true to who you are instead of what others think you are. Although the adaptation does play into part of the book's theme of humanity's threat to itself, with Agent Mansley nearly dropping a nuke on an entire town of innocent people simply because he can't accept the giant as anything other than a weapon. But the adaptation also implemented both hand-drawn and CGI for its animation, giving a far greater visual difference between the giant and other characters, allowing it to further express the themes of the story. And now, I don't intend to discredit the original story. It's not what I'm going to do here, especially since there would be no movie without it. However, the conversion from page to screen not only reintroduced the world to the story of the Iron Giant, but it also reinvented it for newer audiences. I'd say it's safe to say that when asking someone which story is better, they're likely to say the movie adaptation. Not simply because it is better necessarily, but because it's far more recent and a lot more people in this generation would have seen it, grown up with it, making it a lot more relevant in pop culture than the original book. And I'm not going to say that one story is better than the other in this case. But I will say that when looking at the story as a whole, the movie adaptation elevates its legacy. Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko created the animated television show Avatar: The Last Airbender that aired on Nickelodeon in February of 2005. And I doubt I have to explain the concept and story to most people, seeing as how it is one of the most acclaimed television shows of our generation. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to anyways. Now, the story follows two young members of the Southern Water Tribe, Katara, the last waterbender of her tribe, and Sokka, her brother, the self-proclaimed last warrior of the tribe. these two stumble upon a young boy who has been trapped inside a glacier for the past 100 years. The boy, Aang, is revealed to be the Avatar, the only one who can control all four elements and bring balance to the world, and also the last of the air nomads, who are completely wiped out by the Fire Nation 100 years ago. Aang must master the four elements and stop the Fire Lord before he conquers the rest of the world by the end of the summer. Accompanied by Katara and Sokka and his flying bison Appa, they first travel to the Northern Water Tribe so that Aang can learn and Katara can better learn waterbending. They are, however, the entire time being hunted by Zuko, the banished prince of the Fire Nation, seeking to capture the Avatar and reclaim his lost honor. This remains the constant for the next 2 seasons of the show, following Aang and the others as he learns earthbending from Toph in Season 2 and firebending from Zuko in Season 3, who joins the team to stop his father. The series focuses on many topics and themes, a lot of them much heavier than one might expect for a show directed primarily towards children. And these themes follow like generational guilt / expectations, trauma, responsibility, genocide, the repercussions of war, and most important, hope. But ultimately, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the animated series, is about a boy struggling with the literal weight of the world on his shoulders to become who the world needs him to be, while also never compromising who he truly is. Netflix released the live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender under the same title in February of 2024, 19 years after the original. The first season of the live-action, which was the only season at the time that I wrote this, follows the same premise of the original, but condenses what would be multiple episodes into like one episode at a time, so you get fewer episodes with much longer run times. The live action, however, changed more than just the speed at which the story is told. It also changed in some aspects how the story is told. For example, the title sequence is now narrated by one of the past avatars. I'm pretty sure it's Kyoshi instead of Katara. And the opening of the show is the genocide of the air nomads, something we never see in the original, and it's simply to appear more mature. And multiple arcs of the show are thrown together at the same time to try and cover them all at once, like Jet and the Earth Kingdom scientist who works for the Fire Nation. I don't remember his name. His kid with the flying wheelchair. Those two I remember distinctly in Omashu are like put together in the same episode. What's going on there? Why are you doing that? But introducing multiple characters like that far earlier than they should be, and just overall how the story is told at that point makes so much of it feel bloated and very crowded. And let me tell you, that decision was not for the better. Allow me to go on a little bit of a tangent here, and I know I said I wasn't going to get too personal with the summary, but bear with me. Now, when I watch a movie or a TV show that I'm not thoroughly enjoying, I try to just sit through it, power through, just in case it might win me over in the end, because, I'm putting my time into it. I might as well try and get some worth out of it. I could not do that with the live-action Avatar show. I could not. It pained me to sit through even half of these episodes to the point I just couldn't take it anymore. This was a very rare instance of me having to drop a show before I finish it because it was just too painful to watch and I just couldn't anymore. Whatever. you want to say about that, I don't really care. It was too much. I couldn't. But that's why this is supposed to be objective. Anyway, interestingly, Netflix was not the first ones to try to attempt a adaptation of Avatar, as I'm sure every Avatar fan is unfortunately recalling. In 2010, The Last Airbender live-action movie was released, written and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And the film tries to keep to the same story as the first season of the animated show. It, unfortunately, does not do that very well at all. And it is in just a very, very much more condensed fashion. And it does not work well, to say the least. Now, ultimately, the live-action adaptations are more so imitations of the original stories, and they hardly keep the same essence as the originals do. If that makes sense. I hope it does. When looking at the animated series and both of the live-action adaptations, the differences among them could not be clearer. Both of the adaptations, far more noticeably the series, take core aspects out of the show to try and retell the story, and both fail to do so. The series not only affected the legacy of the story, but that of the characters as well, and their individual stories. Katara, for example, is one of the most complex characters in the original story in how she struggles but perseveres in her waterbending, mourns her mother, and keeps the group together. In the series, one simple lesson from Aang in the first episode, and she hardly ever struggles with waterbending ever again. And that waterbending scroll that she spent such great lengths to steal in the original is simply just given to her, also in the first episode, by her grandma, and it takes her almost no time to learn the techniques. And that time it does take her, oh, you better believe most of that is off screen. And that's how you know the development is good, when we don't get to see it. This decision just completely devalues her struggles and motivations in a poor attempt to make her better than she was in the original. And Aang's character is done just as much of a disservice, if not more so, when comparing the original and the new series. Where, at first, he was a cheerful, happy-go-lucky kid, more interested in penguin sledding than his responsibilities as the Avatar, he was turned into a serious, objective-focused person whose sole purpose is mastering the 4 elements. That's his top priority. Now, pragmatically, that's what the Avatar should be focused on, with such a short time frame to master the elements and save the world. But it's Aang's immaturity and irresponsibility that caused him to be trapped in the iceberg in the first place. Well, at least in the original, that is. It's not the case in the live action. He just wasn't feeling right. He wasn't in the right headspace when he learned he was the Avatar. He just needed to fly up into the clouds where things make more sense. He was going to come back, don't worry. But that darn storm trapping him in a glacier for 100 years. Good thing we got to see the death of all of his loved ones, though. Even if the live-action series is newer and tries to appeal to mature audiences and has, frankly, really great visuals, it is a poor imitation of the original story, and honestly leaves a dark stain on its legacy. It's okay, buddy. In 1955, one of the most influential books of all time, Lord of the Rings, was written by J.R.R. Tolkien. The novels were a continuation of his previous book, The Hobbit, written in 1937, taking place decades after the events of the book. The novels follow Frodo Baggins, nephew of Bilbo Baggins, who was the lead from The Hobbit, 3 of Frodo's fellow hobbits, and a group of other adventuring characters, as they journey across Middle-earth to destroy the One Ring. The first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, tells how Frodo, Samwise, Merry, and Pippin journey to Rivendell to form the Fellowship alongside Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, and Gimli. They travel through the mines of Moria, where Gandalf is seemingly killed in his fight against the Balrog, and the Fellowship is further broken apart after Boromir tries to take the ring from Frodo, and again at the hands of an orc attack, splitting the group apart, like literally in this case. The next 2 books, The Two Towers and Return of the King, continued the tale as Frodo and Sam faced perils on the path to Mordor, including the accompaniment of the treacherous creature Gollum, the previous holder of the One Ring before Bilbo. And the rest of the Fellowship fought against the forces of Sauron and Saruman. After reaching the summit of Mount Doom, Frodo, entranced by the ring, tries to abscond with it, but the ever-malicious Gollum bites his finger off and falls into the lava, dying and destroying the One Ring along with him. Sauron's forces are then defeated. Aragorn is crowned the King of Gondor, and the hobbits return to the Shire, which unfortunately was taken over by a group of ruffians led by the evil wizard Saruman. But, don't underestimate these hobbits, because they free the town, and the hobbits can rest easy until Frodo must depart to the Grey Havens, never to return. Which, I am going to be completely honest, I think is just heaven, or like Valhalla or something like that. Frodo's gone. Everyone else gets to live happily ever after, and Frodo goes to Hobbit heaven. I don't know. Regardless of my lack of understanding of what the Grey Havens are, ultimately, Lord of the Rings books are about the never-ending battles between good and evil. Director Peter Jackson released the first film adaptation of Tolkien's books in 2001, titled the same as the first, Fellowship of the Ring. Jackson then released the second and third in the following years, with Two Towers in 2002 and The Return of the King in 2003. And the movies follow the storyline of the books very closely, though they still cut out certain chunks to make up for the limited runtime and the cohesion of the overall story. Frodo and the other hobbits still take the ring to Rivendell alongside Aragorn. They still all form the Fellowship. They still lose Gandalf at the hands of the Balrog in Moria. Afterwards, though, one of the most notable changes is made from the original story. In the books, Boromir succumbs to the temptations of the ring and attacks Frodo, where he is then killed. But in the film adaptation, Boromir redeems himself after trying to take the ring, and he protects Merry and Pippin from the orcs, dying in battle. Although Merry and Pippin unfortunately do still get taken, but he redeemed himself, and I am not going to discredit Boromir's death. Anyone who does, what's wrong with you? We love Boromir in this house. On this channel, we love Boromir. I'll always remember you. But another key change from the Fellowship is removed, and that is the meeting of Tom Bombadil, a character that the hobbits encounter on their way to Rivendell. And for the adaptation of The Two Towers, one of the most notable changes is the Battle of Helm's Deep, which is not given as much time or focus with approximately like 6 pages given out of the entire book, which in the movie adaptation is expanded into 40 minutes, give or take, of the 2.5 hour long movie, excluding the extended edition, which both times are then longer. And in the final adaptation, Return of the King, the probably most recognizable of the changes comes at the end of the film. Once the hobbits return to the Shire, no band of ruffians have taken over Hobbiton, letting the finale end on their safe return to the Shire and Frodo's departure to whatever the hell the Grey Havens are. Ultimately, the movie adaptations of The Lord of the Rings keep the same message about the never-ending battle between good and evil. When looking at the original books and the film adaptations of Tolkien's story, the differences are far more subtle than most adaptations get, but, obviously they're still very distinct. The movies thoroughly reinvigorated the story of Tolkien's books, and given their collective $310 million budget and a worldwide box office gross of $3 billion, I'd say it was pretty reinvigorative. And to quote my old English professor, seeing the story on screen helped me understand certain emotional beats I skimmed over when reading, and it pushed me to go back to the books with fresh eyes. Those films basically redefined the legacy of the books. They brought a whole new audience to Tolkien and made the story part of mainstream culture. For better or worse, a lot of people now picture the movie versions first. That's a smart guy right there. The impact the movie adaptations have on pop culture is evident. And more importantly, there is an inarguable positive effect on the original story's legacy. So what did we learn? After looking at all these examples of stories and their adaptations made, I've come to realize a few things when it comes to the effect an adaptation has on the legacy of the original. In the case of The Iron Giant, the film adaptation reinvented the story in the transition from page to animation. And for Avatar: The Last Airbender, the live-action series attempted to reinvent it and failed hard, which resulted in a messy story that stumbled in its attempt to surpass the original. And with Lord of the Rings trilogy, the movie adaptations didn't exactly try to reinvent the story, or not exactly simply retell it by condensing things, but chose more so to abridge the story to make it more digestible. So, we have an adaptation's changes that elevated the original's legacy, one that did absolutely no favors to the original's legacy, and one that redefined the legacy of its original. With these results, let's maybe narrow down why these adaptations had the effects that they did. Was the accuracy to the original the reason? Well, in the Iron Giant's case, it diverged greatly from the original story, but was beloved. Avatar told overall the same story, just with mishandled details and prioritizing spectacle over storytelling, which I'm sure many people have heard before, but I'm gonna beat this dead horse. I don't care. The show is bad. And The Lord of the Rings, which was closest to the original story out of all of them, and performed spectacularly. So maybe an adaptation doesn't necessarily need to be accurate to be good. Now, I know that's not exactly going to be a very popular take. After all, one of the greatest factors is what making an adaptation successful is how it's received by viewers. But I still think it's worth time to consider. Maybe all an adaptation really needs to be good is to be faithful, to capture the heart of the original story, the themes, the emotional arc, the worldview, to feel like it really came from the same soul. And maybe that's all an adaptation really needs. If you enjoyed this video essay, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you have any other ideas of adaptations you think I should take a look at, please comment them, because I very much have more I'd like to talk about. Like, for example, the new Mortal Kombat movies. I have some strong opinions on those ones, but, you know, I would also like to take a look at them under the hood. The Devil May Cry anime, which I like. Sue me. You know, I've played most of the first Devil May Cry game, so I'd like to take a bit of a deeper look at those two. And also the live-action show of One Piece, you know, ironically, also Netflix. Well, that's just to name a few. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me go on about the legacy effect of adaptations, and I hope to see you again sometime. Take care.